the U.S. Republican Party has released their 2024 platform, and it's a big election year, so we're really curious to know what exactly is the Republican plan for Ukraine. But the reality is, I don't think even they really know what they're planning on doing. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's try to discern some sort of meaning from the U.S. electoral system. Okay, so this is from the not officially adopted, but believed to be generally considered accurate 2024 GOP platform. This is, of course, the outline of what the U.S. Republican Party wants to bring to the United States in terms of their sort of vision of leading the country. And for us, the question we're reading it for is, what are they going to do about Ukraine? It's one of the biggest issues, right? Because the Democratic Party actually seems relatively aligned on Ukraine issues, on particularly Ukraine aid, right? Ukraine aid polling data shows that at least as of April, let's pull it up here, that support for Ukraine is actually relatively high for everybody, right? This is of all Americans. The percentage that's saying we're doing not enough, actually, interestingly, has spiked to about 36% of people think we're not doing enough, 36% think we're doing too much, and about 26% think we're doing just the right amount. And if there's one thing we can know, it's that current policy, right? You might note that some of these data points in March actually correspond with the push towards getting more Ukraine aid published, right? This was the people who say we weren't doing enough. This was before the fall of Avdiivka. And once the battlefield started to turn against Ukraine, more people suddenly said, I actually think we are not doing enough. All right, so a majority of Americans think either the U.S. should keep aiding Ukraine or aid Ukraine even more than we currently are. But that is interestingly split because, as you can see, the Republicans who think that we are doing, the percentage of Republicans who say that we're not doing enough, about 15% of Republicans feel the U.S. isn't doing enough. About 34% of independents say we're not doing enough. And about 60% of Democrats say we're not doing enough. So among the Democratic Party, there's a lot of unity among voters, and therefore among representatives, right? But in the Republican Party, it's way more distributed. You notice Speaker Mike Johnson did get the Ukraine aid bill passed, and in fact, managed to deliver what should have been a stunning legislative victory in passing what would have been the most robust immigration reform in a generation, maybe two. But that got nuked by Trump, who didn't want Biden to get a legislative win, even though it wouldn't have been a win for Biden. It would have angered his Democratic base tremendously. But that's okay. I'm not a politician. But based on the qualities of the current presidential candidates, maybe I should be. Certainly my ability to read is catapulting me head and shoulders above everyone else. So what exactly are the Republicans doing to try to assuage this kind of unknown? Well, the answer is their solution seems to be vague and confusing, right? Now, the 2022 GOP platform, Make America Great Again, shout out to the dedication to the forgotten men and women of America. You are not forgotten. That's pretty broad, but shout out to them for looking out. I think there's some truth to this, right? A lot of people sit there and go, listen, I'm a regular person. I'm waking up every day. I'm working. I'm providing for my family. I'm not a special case. But ultimately, I think a lot of those folks are the ones who make this country, literally, economically. So you can't forget about them in your rush to help out edge cases, small, anyway, that's not neither here nor there. Here's where things get interesting. First off, let's see if we can zoom in here a bit. And what I find interesting is the capitalization, right? That's kind of the first thing that I walked away from when I saw this. Join me. Now, if you know how to read English, you know that there's rules to what gets capitalized, right? And so our beginning of a sentence, perfect, right? Nations, maybe, but not really. You're not supposed to capitalize our nation. You're supposed to capitalize the name of a nation like America, right? Our nation's history, this is not supposed to be capitalized, right? This would be like if there was a book called Our Nation's History, but there isn't. He's not referring to a book, right? It's filled with stories of brave men and women who gave everything they had to build America into the greatest nation in the history of the world. Do you notice this is also, again, like if it was the title to a song or something, that would make sense. But this is not, none of these things should be capitalized. Generations of, and then capitalized American, correct. Patriots, nope. Some have summoned this American spirit of strength, determination, and love of country. Again, probably doesn't need to be capitalized. It's just like somebody just like slept through the grammar part where you capitalize things. And here's what bothers me about this. What bothers me is that I understand that like when you tweet, you want to use capitalizations for emphasis, right? Social media has a different set of rules, but these are the people who are going to govern the country, okay? And you know that I believe, controversial though it may be, the people in charge of the largest nation, the largest economic power and military power on planet Earth should be really competent. And this is their document, right? This isn't a tweet. This isn't an off-the-cuff thing. This is your official roadmap. And your roadmap, like, can't follow the rules of grammar, right? The early days of our republic, possibly correct, though not really. Founding generation shouldn't be capitalized, right? So just completely insane. And you notice here, just all capitalizing the word serious decline. Now we are a nation in serious decline. Again, this is a pet peeve. Sorry. I'm going aside, but you can see this is just like sort of grammatically insane, right? But let's look. Here we go. Let's get to the policy positions. Make clear, offer the American people the 2024 GOP Platform to make America great again. It's forward-looking agenda, not capitalized. He's capitalizing all nouns. That begins with the following 20 promises that we will accomplish very quickly. Good writing doesn't need the word very, but it's fine. It's fine, right? Win the White House and Republican majorities, not capitalized in the House and Senate. Okay, I'm done criticizing capitalization, all right? Some of these don't make any sense. End inflation and make America affordable again. Not really. That's not how modern economies work. They all need a little bit of inflation. Quickly, so you can explain it to your friends at dinner, right? If there were no inflation, right? Nobody can keep prices perfectly exact, right? Like the price of everything varies a little bit, right? There's always going to be things you can't control. There'll be 5% more wheat one year, so the price of bread will go a little higher, a little lower, right? So if prices always got to go in one direction. And if they go in the lower direction, right? If let's say next year, the price of a loaf of bread is lower than it is this year, what are you going to do, right? You'll never buy bread. You'll never buy a car. Better example, right? If you know for certain that price of cars are going to come down next year, you will never buy a car because by the time you get to next year, you're going to go, well, it'll be even lower next year. So you stretch out, you do the least amount of consuming possible. You also do the least amount of, you also don't need to invest in anything because literally by hoarding cash, your dollars are worth more every single year, meaning you don't want to spend them. You don't want to invest them. But American companies, in order to grow economically, need investments. You have to invest your money, right? When you invest it, even in like a bank CD, the bank then loans that out to help build houses, right? Get your neighbor a new house. Right? So they grow the economy because you have to invest your money. If your money grows, can buy more things without investment, then the whole system collapses. Deflationary issues collapse whole countries because everyone becomes a currency hoarder. So what they mean is reduce the inflation rate to something sustainable, right? Okay, so sorry, moving beyond that, right? Okay, here's the closest they come to talking about Ukraine. They say prevent World War III. Well, nobody wants World War III. Restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country, all made in America. One, there's not really a threat of like cruise missiles against the United States. I don't know how else to tell you this. If you told me you wanted to build a Great Iron Dome in like Guam, yeah, that'd be good. Maybe in Hawaii, sure, yeah. But the whole country, like no cruise missile is going to hit Kansas, and a ICBM cannot be interdicted by an Iron Dome. Period. So, but I okay, and prevent World War III. Okay, as we've discussed on this channel extensively, Russia currently, with maximum effort, is toe-to-toe with Ukraine. Okay, so those two are tied up with each other. So who's left to fight World War III? Right? Russia's going to fight everybody in Europe? No. You're like, well, maybe China will try to invade Taiwan. That's a real concern. And maybe those two events are enough to constitute World War III. But as you might recall, in World War II, there was extensive fighting in Europe, in East Asia, in Africa. The only place that didn't have extensive combat, right, was basically Australia. Even Oceania had a lot of the island fighting. But basically North America and South America. That's it, right? So like a multi-continent war, probably not likely to happen. But it's you should prevent it. And peace in Europe, right? This is so generic. They don't even want to acknowledge Ukraine at all. They just say, we're going to get peace in Europe. Which is none of these things are like this isn't a plan. This is what you want your plan to do. Now, before I totally dunk on these guys, and I'm going to dunk on them. I'm not going to dunk on them, actually. I'm going to be pretty generous. But I do want to mention that if you want to support my channel, you notice I'm independent. I criticize everybody, which means sponsors hate me, and it means YouTube routinely demonetizes my stuff. And God help me if I try to analyze combat footage. Like just earlier today, I did a deep dive analysis of some pretty absurd bunker clearing, right? Where a Russian soldier tried to clear a house with an anti-tank mine. It went really badly for them. And then we saw some GoPro footage of a Ukrainian clearing a house better with a grenade. And we talked about the tactics, and we knew where each of this fighting was taking place. Can't put it here on YouTube. That video, as well as dozens of other videos, is available on combatvetnews.com for members. Again, I depend on you guys to support the channel. So if you want, become a specialist here. You're going to get the members-only videos, uncensored, viral combat footage, sometimes as little as 48 hours old, twice a week. And, if you become a lieutenant tier or above, you're going to get access to a weekly Q&A. You ask me questions, anything about my combat service, my thoughts on Ukraine, particular issues, whatever you want, and I'll answer it. Right? Obviously, within reason, I'm not going to feed the trolls. But you can also, if you're a lieutenant tier above, get the shout outs, and the colonel tiers get by name shout outs at the end of videos. That's how much your support means to me. I really appreciate it. If you can, the link is in the description to combatvetnews.com. Okay, let's talk about the actual thing going on here with this GOP platform. You might notice the ideas are very simple, very uncomplicated, and the reason is pretty simple, and it's depressing. The reason is because of literacy in the United States. Literacy in the United States is actually pretty flippin' terrible, right? Now, literacy, level 1 literacy, about 92% of Americans have. But level 1 is terrible. Is basically able to sound out individual words. Simple tasks based on the information they read. Right? Below level 1 may only understand very basic vocabulary or be functionally illiterate. Now, according to the Department of Education, which uses an adult should be able to read at least a 6th grade level, 54% of adults, most adults in America, cannot read beyond a 6th grade level. And that's a problem, if you didn't notice, right? Means much of the time they don't even understand the texts they're reading. You have to write things in a almost childlike manner, right? In 2022, right, they found that, let's see if we can find it here, around 54% of Americans were below a 6th grade level. Now, some people, about about 1/3 of those people with poor literacy were born outside the United States, right? They're not native English speakers. But 2/3 of them were born and educated here in the United States. And they still can't read beyond a 6th grade level. 54% of Americans are below a 6th grade level. And I found for you guys a text that they use in 6th grade to help grade comprehension. So just a brief look at one of these paragraphs. This is the kind of thing that is too much for the average American. Here's a paragraph. So, what makes the honey badger so tough? They have speed, stamina, and agility, but so do many animals. They aren't stronger than lions, so how do they stop them? The thing that sets the honey badger apart is their skin. Their skin is thick and tough. Arrows, spears, and bites from other animals can rarely pierce it. Right? So that is the kind of literacy level that is too much. That is beating the average American. Kicking their ass. And so, you have to write a party platform that someone at like a 4th grade level. So complex ideas like control inflation. You just say end inflation. Complex ideas like broker a negotiated peace between Ukraine and Russia while maintaining Ukrainian sovereignty. It's too complicated. Just say peace in Europe. Right? Even things like ensuring international stability. No, they just have to say prevent World War III. Simple, emotional, uncomplicated. Right? There is nothing in here that provides any kind of additional details. Right? Look at these. These are oftentimes one-sentence statements, which is, on one hand, that's like a politician way, right? If you don't make a verifiable promise, you're never going to have to be held accountable for it. Sure. But if you actually look for it, the war, that's it. That restore peace through strength. That's it. They mentioned the war 3 times. So there's not really a movement here to create a real plan because most Americans wouldn't be able to understand it anyway, which means we have absolutely no fucking idea what the GOP plan is. Which again, if you're watching this channel, you're probably not the average voter. 1, you can probably read. 2, you probably care about the nuance of things, right? You the words, the details, right? Like the analysis. That's not something that, again, this isn't a criticism of the Republican Party. This is a criticism of the U.S. system, right? The voters get the exact party they want. Right? If all the voters wanted a sophisticated intellectual party with real concrete plans that they can understand and take action on, then that party would give it to them, right? Americans get exactly what they want. And the reason is because the average American is I almost called them idiots. IQs are dropping, but they are not idiots. They're just not really able to read so good. But one other interesting story before we get out of here. Macron is out in the US and Germany saying they are the chief opponents of NATO's Ascension. And that's interesting for a couple of reasons. First off, NATO's Ascension, right? This makes perfect sense. And you're like, well, why? It's because the US and Germany understand Germany is the EU's largest economic backer, right? It's the largest economy in Europe. And the U.S. is the largest military bloc in NATO. And so these two are the ones with the most skin in the game. I don't know how else to put it. And so if Ukraine becomes a NATO member, it would instantly trigger Article 5, thereby creating a situation in which the other countries are mandated to provide troops. And if you're France or Belgium, your mandate is to provide like a few thousand troops. For the United States or Germany, you're talking about huge portions of your economy. And in the case of the United States, huge portions of your armed forces are going to be deployed to Ukraine. They have to be because of Article 5, right? And the truth is that because NATO requires unanimous ascension, everyone else can support it because their support is symbolic, right? Like if the U.S. was to say privately, like, actually, we wouldn't be opposed to letting Ukraine in. We want to kick the shit out of the Russians. And Germany was to drop their concerns the same way. Would then France say, yeah, F it, like, let's go, let's fucking go, baby? No, of course not. They're not going to, because right now these are symbolic dissensions. It's just like when people vote. A lot of times, once enough people in a vote for legislation, once enough of each side is kind of committed and you know how the vote's going to go, people can do things like make symbolic votes that won't actually change the outcome. They'll abstain to express their displeasure with some aspect of legislation. But as long as it won't actually impact the legislation, they're voting for it, right? It's why one of the times that parties tend to, once legislation, they know it's going to make it through, everybody gets to say, okay, great, this legislation is going to pass. How do we symbolically express our displeasure? And that's why they tend to look narrower, the votes, than they really are. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. I hope you got some insight. Huge thank you to our Colonel tier members like Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Miles Waring, Eugenia Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, and Franz Zacharias, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. Could not do this without you guys. You guys are carrying the channel for me. I thank you so much. Link is in the description if you want to see that crazy video from earlier today. Cheers.